Now, today we're going to talk about the Old South. And by Old South, I'm meaning after the Civil War was going on. And so this will take us into a few interesting things actually up into Jim Crow and how all these things happened. Um, Now, to understand this, we have to understand what was the big issue here. And that, of course, would be states' rights. But of course, the biggest states' right would be slavery. But it wasn't just slavery. It was taxation. It was all kinds of things. Slavery is just the one that probably stands out the most. Now, to see why this is important, we have to go to a decision in 1846, 1857 that was called Dred Scott. And so here we have Mr. Dred Scott, right? Mr. Dred Scott was a slave. And what happened is he ran away to a northern state and decided to sue for his freedom. This actually happened up in St. Louis, and there's a big courthouse that goes into that. And so, landmark decision here, they decided that slaves were property. And so, this was a big, big issue, and it kind of leads further as to why they wanted to really abolish slavery and why the 14th Amendment is so necessary, because they saw these people not as people, but as property. And so, that was the decision of Dred Scott. All right? Now, as I said, slavery is a much broader thing here that goes into states' rights. And so, what do I mean? What are states' rights? States' rights basically talks about powers that the individual 50 states now can do that the federal government cannot do. And this goes back to that court case we talked about the who's your daddy, right? Who has the right to decide these different things. And so that's states' rights. Now, following the Civil War, of course, we know, and I'm skipping through that because we don't have time to go into that. Wish we did, but we don't. Coming out of the Civil War, we know, of course, we went into an era that was known as Reconstruction. Now, Reconstruction was crazy. The biggest reason it was so crazy is because Lincoln was like, yes, yes, let's do it, and Lincoln gets shot and killed by John Wilkes Booth. And so we have Andrew Johnson, who, by the way, is the only president to ever be impeached. And so Andrew Johnson comes up with Reconstruction. What does Reconstruction mean? It's the process of bringing the southern states back into the United States, or as they called it, the Union, and how they came about it. And there was different ways that happened. Now, the biggest part of Reconstruction was getting these former slaves what we need. Now, as we just went through, and I'm not going to go through them again, we do have the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. These are called the Civil War Amendments. Remember, 13, set them free. 14, give them rights. And 15, let them vote. And so that was the problem with the South, is they didn't want to give them rights or let them vote. And so that we'll go into that. Now, there existed two kind of horrible things here, and these just sound bad. Scallywags and carpetbaggers. That just sound like they're not good people. And maybe that just came from the name. Now, who is a scallywag? A scallywag is someone who lived in the South, disagreed, or dissented as they called it, and actually agreed with the North. South would call these people traitors. And so these are people who lived in the South but agreed with the North and said that they were doing the right things. Now, following this, during Reconstruction, we had a group of men come from the North that were called carpetbaggers. And the carpetbag was because of we didn't have suitcase at this time. It was a bag made of carpet that you carried your stuff in. So the carpetbaggers were businessmen coming from the North into the South looking to make a buck. They were snake charmers. They were, whatever they could do to get people to buy their crap. Basically, they were door-to-door salesmen before that era came about. Now, all of this could have been over very quickly. This goes through Grant and all these different things. And then we have this man, Samuel Tilden. In 1876, we have a problem that has never happened again. And so Samuel Tilden, he ran on the honest Sam Tilden, right? And Sam Tilden wanted to end Reconstruction. Now, the problem with Sam Tilden is he tied in the election of 1876. It was a complete tie between Samuel Tilden and a man named Rutherford B. Hayes. So what happens when the Electoral College ties? Well, they actually go to the Senate and the House Representatives let them vote. And guess what happened then? They tied. And so we have a complete stalemate. We have no idea what to do. So Tilden and Hayes go behind and make a deal. And that deal is called the Compromise of 1877. Okay? And so what happens in the Compromise of 1877? Samuel Tilden will basically give up the election to Rutherford B. Hayes if he ends Northern troop presence in the South. You see, to keep Reconstruction and keep the Southern people from fighting back against the now freed slaves, the Northern soldiers were there to make sure bad things wouldn't happen. So, Hayes removed the Northern troops, and we have the fact that Tilden gives up the election, basically. And so that's where we're going to leave it right now.